The various kinds of cryptography are symmetric and asymmetric, like we discussed before. In symmetric key cryptography, what happens is the original text, the plain text, is encrypted using a symmetric key, which is called a private key here, and same key is used for the decryption. Like original text is being converted into ciphertext. There is an encryption method and symmetric key is being used. And here the key is same. That is the idea of symmetric key cryptography. So why did we come towards asymmetric key cryptography where we have public and secret key both? Why? Because in this case, the distribution of this particular key, because this is a private key, its distribution, its storage, its authentication, everything was a concern. And that is why, although this system is very fast, symmetric key encryption is a very fast system, but still it is not going to be much secure if we are transmitting data from one end of the world to another. So this is not going to be a very efficient method for that. Still, it is very secure method. In asymmetric key cryptography, what happens is the plain text is encrypted using a public key. And this public key, and then a ciphertext is generated, and the decryption is done by a secret key. And that is again converted into the plain text. So here we are having two keys in use. One is the public key and another is the secret key. We will see this with the help of an example. We will discuss the example of digital certificate at the end. So we will see that in that case, how we are using these two keys to encrypt our message. So this is the basic idea of symmetric and asymmetric key cryptography. Now the ciphers that I discussed, block versus stream ciphers. You can see this particular block diagram. This block cipher and stream cipher. This is basically a category of symmetric key cryptography in which you are using a single key. That is your private key. So block cipher, what it does, it encrypts and decrypts a block of the text at a time. That is, it is going to take a block at a time and then it is going to encrypt or decrypt it. And in stream ciphers, what happens? Encryption and decryption is done one byte at a time. This byte could contain some, it is going to contain 8 bits. So 8 bits are taken at time. So it is not in the form of a block. Block is a set of bytes, like you're taking some bytes together. That is a block. And in this case, in stream cipher, you are just taking a byte at a time. One of the very important block cipher, this one, which encrypt and decrypt a block of the text at a time. So one very important algorithm is data encryption standard, DAS. This we are going to discuss in detail here. So data encryption standard is a symmetric key block cipher. That is, we are using only one key. That is your private key. And it was published by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. Here, the plain text is of 64-bit. That is your block size. This doesn't mean that your plain text has to be of 64-bit only. Your plain text can be of any number of alphabets, but it is converted into block sizes of 64-bit. So this block size I have taken, a block size of plain text of 64-bit, and key length here is 64-bit. It is generally 64-bit, but there are some bits which are used as parity bits. So it is reduced to 56 bits. So your cipher key is actually of 56 bits only, because 8 bits are not used for encryption. These are check bits only. So this is the general idea of data encryption standard. We will go into every box one by one. So we are taking a 64-bit plain text, and at the end, we are generating a 64-bit ciphertext. You're taking an initial permutation and there is a final permutation here. And in between these two permutations, there are 16 rounds. And these 16 rounds are operated by 48-bit key, which is being generated by a round key generator, which is in itself taking 56-bit cipher key. And it is reducing it to 48-bit keys, and then it is putting these into the rounds. Now we will see what are these initial final permutations here. This is basically the initial permutation. Like suppose your 64-bit plain text, you are just numbering it this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on up to 64. So your initial permutation will be like this, like your first alphabet or whatever letter you have here, that goes up to here. Actually, that is going to be a bit. So it goes up to here. Second goes to 8, and so on. 58 goes to 1, 64 goes to 25. So this is defined inside the data encryption standard algorithm. This is fixed that this modification is going to happen. This permutation is going to happen. And same happens during the final permutation. Again, 1 goes to 58. Here 25 goes to 64. So this is defined inside the permutation boxes. So this is how these two permutations are done. Now we will look into the round functions. These are basically functions. If you think of this particular dash as a proper algorithm or a C program, then you will see that you will be writing this, you'll be inputting this text, you're taking it like seen from the user, and then what you're doing, you're performing a function of initial permutation, then there is a function of round 1, function of round 2, and so on. So this is a round function. What happens inside a round function is the dash function applies a 48-bit key to the rightmost 32 bits to produce a 32-bit output. So here we are only taking 32 bits. That is the rightmost 32 bits. So whatever initial permutation comes to round 1, we take its rightmost 32 bits and we put it into an expansion box. And this expansion box is going to expand it to 48 bits, because the key that we are getting here, this key is 48-bit, and permutation, we are only using 32 bits of this permutation. So we have to expand those 32 bits to 48-bit, and so that we can XOR it with the key. So this is what is happening. We are using this expansion P box to expand the bits. So we got 48 bits, and these are XORed with the other 48 bits, and we get the S boxes. Then this is fed to the S boxes. And then again, 32 bits are gone to the straight P box. We will discuss these one by one. So for now, we are just seeing this round function where we have taken 32 bits, we have expanded these bits, and then we have XORed it. So now what happens inside this expansion P box? Like you're inputting 32 bits and you're outputting 48 bits. What happens inside this is the 32nd bit goes over here. This is the table that is used for the same. 32 bit goes over here. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then again we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. We follow this particular table. This table is fixed. We follow this particular table and we expand these 32 bits to 48 bits using this expansion P box. And after that, we XOR these 48 bits with the key, which is then fed to the S boxes. Now, what are S boxes? S boxes are basically the substitution boxes. Now here, we have done up till now, the XORing has been done and we have fed it to the S boxes. There are 8 S boxes in this particular function. So S boxes are basically going to carry out the confusion. They are going to like mix all this together. So there is an array of S boxes here. So there is 1 S box, 2, so on. And this is again done to convert this 48-bit input into 32-bit output, because initially we only took 32 bits inside, so we have to give 32 bits outside. So we are doing that confusion over here. Now after that, we have to look into this key generator, how this round key is generated. So here what happens, I told you that our key is of 64 bits. That is converted into 56 bits. How? Because some bits we are taking for parity, like to check the errors and all. So we are dropping those bits out from here, and we are only considering the 56 bits. These 56 bits are again divided into 28 bits, which are shifted left in these particular boxes. Shifting is done, and shifting is also done according to the rounds. For round number 1, 2, 9, and 16, only 1-bit shift is done. And for all other rounds, 2-bit shift is done. So we are shifting left over here. These 28 bits are put into this compression P box. This is again a box which will be containing some form of like there will be a mathematical a table behind this for the conversion and all. And then again it is shifted in the next round. In every round we are using this, getting out of this compression P box, we are getting this 48-bit key. So This is how we are getting these 48-bit key in every round. Now, this algorithm, DAS, I told you about the basic idea of encryption. That is how symmetric encryption is done. In that, what we have an encryption algorithm. I said that encryption algorithm is not simple. Many things go behind that. So this is a typical example of that. So there are a lot of things going on over here. This is your encryption algorithm. This entire thing is your encryption algorithm. So you have to write a lot of functions to execute the encryption at first. And then there are some properties of data encryption standard DAS, which make it very effective to use. One is the avalanche effect, and another is the completeness. What is avalanche effect? Avalanche effect means if you introduce a small change in your plain text, it is going to result into a great change into your ciphertext, because there are a lot of permutations going on. There is a lot of like substitutions are there, confusion is there. So if you introduce a very small change in your plain text, the ciphertext is going to change a lot. So this is avalanche effect, which is desirable in all the encryption algorithm. This is what we measure for all the encryption algorithm. So DAS is very good in this particular effect. Completeness. Completeness means each bit of the ciphertext depends upon many bits of the plain text. Like sometimes if we say if a person is able to identify some part of the plain text, like in the chosen plain text attack, he chooses some part of the plain text and he tries to find out these particular algorithm ciphertext or particular cipher being used, which technique is being used for the encryption. So that is not possible in this case, because every bit of ciphertext is going to depend upon many bits of plain text. He needs to know a lot of he needs a lot of idea about the plain text to find out the kind of cipher, kind of encryption algorithm that is being used. So it is this property is being called completeness. Now, the only limitation here is, although we can see that this is a very, we can assume it to be complex as there are a lot of steps, but still the key length is very small. Like there is only a 56-bit key we are using to, in every round we are using it. So this key length is very small when we talk about various encryption, various when we are planning to secure various organizations which are split over all over the world. So this makes the key very weak. So to improve upon this, triple dash, three dash technique was used, which is one of the most prominent forms of encryption nowadays. It is based on dash algorithm itself, but it what it does, it uses dash cipher 3 times. It is going to use it thrice to encrypt its data. So this is a very secure method. Then after this, there is another method called advanced encryption standard. This overpowers all these dash and triple dash as well. So this is also used in many kinds of uh, applications. And this is popular and widely adopted. This is also symmetric encryption algorithm, just like dash. And it is found to be 6 times faster than triple dash. So you can imagine its capability. And its features are that it is a symmetric block cipher, just as dash, and it has 128-bit data. It takes 128-bit data, like dash is taking 64-bit of data. This is going to take 128-bit data, and keys are also of three variants. 128-bit key can be used, 192 and 256-bit keys can be used. So the key size is large, which makes it very efficient and very secure. That is why it is stronger and it is faster than triple dash, and it is faster because it is taking a larger block size, so data will be processed faster. And it is going to provide specification and design details. And its software implementation can also be done in C and Java. You can write the particular code for every function or every round that is used inside this. The internal structure is going to be similar like this. There are some changes of the input data and various substitution boxes which are used, the combinations and permutation that are used inside. That is going to change. The mathematics is going to change, but the idea is similar. Now, the various issues that happen with these kind of encryption algorithms are about keys. How do you manage those keys? How do you store those keys? where do you store those keys on a centralized server, and how can you like ensure that that server is going to keep your keys safe, and how do you distribute these keys? Like we are using private key here, so its distribution is to be secure. It has to be secure. So there are various key exchange algorithms and various methods which are used for authentication, which will be discussed tomorrow's lecture, which is basically on key exchange. Now, after this, in this, I gave you a brief idea about what these symmetry cryptography algorithms are. So after this, we'll be seeing one more term called end-to-end encryption. You must have heard about this term when you talk of WhatsApp. Like WhatsApp is having this end-to-end encryption feature. Now, WhatsApp, it ensures that the person with whom you are communicating, there is no one in between. Not even WhatsApp can read the messages that you send to the another person. And the messages are secured with locks, and the recipient has a special key to unlock it. And for this, they are using a protocol called Signal Protocol, which is developed by Open Whisper Systems. You can find out its implementation. You can find out the details about this Signal Protocol on their website, Open Whisper Systems. And now, what exactly happens? What steps are used to ensure this end-to-end encryption when two people are communicating on WhatsApp? What happens is when the user is going to open WhatsApp, there are two different keys, public and private. These two keys are generated. Encryption process is going to take place on the phone itself. Like this process is happening on the phone itself. There are two different keys, public and private. Private key is going to remain with the user. Like if I'm the sender, so it will remain with me. And public key is transferred to the receiver via a centralized WhatsApp server. And public key encrypts the sender's message. I'm sending the message, so I will encrypt it with the public key on the phone even before it reaches the centralized server. And server is only used to transmit the encrypted message. The message can only be unlocked by the private key of the receiver. There is no third party in between. So if any hacker is going to trying to hack it or trying to read the messages, it will fail because of the encryption that has been incorporated. So this is a like how it shows that WhatsApp is secure. So there are two keys which are generated, public and private keys, and encryption process take place on your phone itself, and then this is sent to the uh, transmitted through the server to the receiver. And public key is used to encrypt the sender's message, and server is only used to transmit the encrypted message. So it is unlocked on the phone of other person only. So this is what end-to-end encryption that is being used nowadays. Now, how do I verify that WhatsApp is using end-to-end encryption? Now, everyone must have seen that particular icon or particular option, end-to-end encryption on their phones. To verify this, what you can do is, for example, just look at this window, left window. This is someone's contact. I have just opened someone's contact on my WhatsApp. Here, there is a option for encryption. There is just one option. If you click here, it is saying that messages to this chat and calls are secured with end-to-end encryption. If you tap it, then you will see this particular QR code, and then there is a 60-bit key over here. Now, if you scan this code onto your receiver, like suppose this person, I am just scanning this code with my, verifying it with this person's mobile number. If it matches, that means your messages are secure. There is no tampering going in between. Is it sufficient enough? One second. Let me read your message. Encryption only protects whatever is, such as our internet connection, email, or files, but it does nothing to protect us from the other online threats. Yes, right. That's absolutely right. Uh, for all of those things, we need to be very careful. Like we need to be very aware of various kinds of uh, I'll be coming up to that also, like what kind of logos you have to see on a particular website to be like assuring yourself that this particular website is not going to steal my data. So there are some methods by which you can ensure this. Last step of the end-to-end encryption process. Yes, right. Okay, verification you're talking about? Last step of the end-to-end process, are you talking about the verification or the, should I go to the previous slide? WhatsApp one, okay. You can just try this along. You just open your phone. You can open anyone's contact. Just tap on somebody's contact. You will see this particular code here. You can do check for some of your family member who's around. You just click on this encryption button, and then you will see a security code. This you can scan with your uh, camera, and then you can see where these two are met. Or you can just do one thing. You can just match this key, this 60-bit key. If it is same on the other person's phone, then you are secure. All steps. Okay, these are the steps. If you want to repeat this again. What happens during end-to-end encryption is when the user first open the WhatsApp, there are two different keys, public and private. Like, so here, which kind of cryptography we are using? We are using asymmetric cryptography here. So public and private are generated, and the encryption process takes place on your phone itself. Private key must be remaining with the user, and public key is transferred to the receiver via the centralized WhatsApp server. And public key is going to encrypt the sender's message on the phone even before it reaches the centralized server. And server is going to transmit the encrypted message. Whatever encrypted message is going on the server, it is just going to transmit it. So no encryption is happening on the server. So end-to-end encryption just means that encryption is happening at the sender end, and whatever is going to be decrypted, it happens at the receiver's end, and the keys are transferred in between. That is the idea of end-to-end encryption. And for this, they are using this particular uh, code, this 60-bit key they are using, which you can check. Like now you must have heard about Zoom platform, that this is being banned in India. Like there is a petition going on to ban this Zoom meetings. Some companies have already banned this for use, for like official use. They have told that you can use it for personal purposes if you want. So why this is not secure? Because this is not supporting end-to-end encryption, which is one of the major like encryption algorithm that we have nowadays. This Cisco WebEx platform, this also is using this end-to-end encryption. So you can read more about it in detail if you wish. Now coming on to the online payments, how online payment process is going to work. So you must have heard about the payment gateway. There is a payment gateway that opens whenever you are going to pay some amount on your phone, like some bill or anything, or some online transaction that you're doing for shopping or anything. So customer pays via phone or website, and when he clicks on the payment button or everything, the payment details are securely sent via a payment gateway. And then the particular whichever, suppose you're using MasterCard, Visa or anything, then merchant account is going to, the particular merchant account is going to process your card details, and customer is notified that your payment has been successful or has been declined. So in case of a transaction, what is going to happen is either your transaction is going to fail completely, or it is going to be executed perfectly. So there is no in between here. So that is how the banking systems work. Finally the funds are settled to the merchant. Now in this area, in this particular area, we can see some things Like if you want to secure your internet transactions, one is you need to use latest internet browser, and more recommended is the use of SSL, secure socket layer. Now, whenever you are performing any online transaction, you can check for these two things, HTTPS, and there is a SSL lock symbol here. You can just see at this particular lock symbol. If this symbol is there, that means SSL, secure socket layer, is being used. So this gateway is secure enough. Now, you must have heard about these three terms, SSL, TLS, and HTTPS. Now, what is the meaning of these three terms? What is the difference between these three terms? So this you must have heard about many a times. HTTPS is used here in this previous slide. HTTPS is being used here, and this is the SSL lock symbol. So what is the difference? SSL basically stands for Secure Sockets Layer. That is, it is a technology to keep internet connection secure and safeguard any sensitive data that is sent between the two systems, and preventing the criminals to read or modify any information or any personal details. The two systems which which are concerned over here can be a server and a client, or these two systems can be a server and a server to server also. And TLS, transport layer security, is updated version of this SSL. It is more secure and it is updated out of SSL. And HTTPS is basically a protocol. HTTPS is hypertext transfer protocol secure, and it appears in the URL whenever a website is secured by an SSL certificate. So generally, whatever website is going to start with HTTPS, it is generally secured by SSL certificate. And the details of the certificate, issuing authority, the corporate name of the website owner, everything can be viewed if you just click on the lock symbol. If you just click on this symbol, lock symbol, you will get all the information about issuing authority, certificate details, and corporate name of the website owner. You can have all that information. Yes, how SSL and TLS is used in encryption or decryption. This is basically, this is a technology. This is a standard. This is a technology to keep your internet connection secure. Like your connection, you're having a, one second, have to mute the participants. Okay. So SSL is basically a technology which is used to secure your internet connection. In this technology, you further have the encryption and decryption algorithms, like what I have told. We have DAS, triple DAS. There are various cipher algorithms. Various, like there can be block ciphers, there can be stream ciphers. So the encryption, decryption algorithms are those. And this is a technology, overall package, or you can say, which is used to keep your internet connection secure. Like if there is some handshaking protocols are there between these two servers which are communicating with each other, and between a server and a client, so whatever handshaking and all is to be done, that is also incorporated inside this secure socket layer in TLS. Yes, right, sir. It is completely updated version. TLS is completely updated version. That is why it has not completely replaced. In some places, you will still find SSL, but yes, you're right that it is like being taken over by TLS. Absolutely, sir. How do we confirm whether the transaction is confirmed without attacker? Through SSL protocol. Without attacker, through SSL protocol. Actually, what happens is, uh, if you're talking about the banking transaction, so if there is any alteration in between, or anyone tries to like, if there is no scope of, I mean, alteration in between, and if there is anything like that, you are just given a, like you must be getting some message, someone is trying to log in into your system or anything like that. That kind of checks are there inside SSL. So I think that is how we ensure that the particular transaction is accurate. And in transaction processing, it happens that it is either going to fail or it is going to be completely executed. Now you can look for the digital certificates also, which are authenticating the entities that you're dealing with, like VeriSign Secured. You must have seen this logo somewhere. It is generally on the payment gateways, or we can say the online transactions, whenever we make online transactions. So you can look for these digital certificates which authenticate the entities that you are dealing with. And then you can also read the privacy policy. If this kind of logo is there, Trust E-certified privacy, these logos ensure that the privacy is being ensured by this. You can open up the privacy policy. You can read everything about it, what data is being shared, what data is being protected, and everything. All that information is given inside that. So here, this is an example of the asymmetric cryptography, and we can relate it with that. This is basically digital signature. Okay. So this is about digital signature, how digital signature is ensured. It is like actually implemented. So suppose this is the data that is to be sent, and this data, a hash function is generated. A hash function is generated to this data, and this hash function is encrypted using signers, that is the sender's private key, and a signature is generated. Certificate and signature are attached to the data, and then a digitally signed data is prepared. And this digitally signed data is further sent to the receiver, where the verification process take place. One process is the signing process and another process is the verification process. So in this particular case, what happens, the digitally signed data, the data, on data we apply the hash function, we calculate the hash, and on the signature we decrypt it using the signer's public key, and we compare the hash values generated in those cases. If the hashes which are generated are equal, then the signature is valid. And if there is a mismatch in the hash values of the data and the signature, then the signature is invalid. So digital signature is one technique which is being used for various purposes to ensure the authentication. So there are two steps in this: signing and verification. Now, there are another concepts, like you must have heard about quantum cryptography. For this, quantum satellites have been launched by China and all. So we'll just discuss this in brief, what quantum cryptography does. Quantum cryptography, it is basically using the principles of quantum mechanics to do the encryption of the data, and to transmit in some way that it cannot be hacked. So what are quantum mechanics is just, suppose Alice and Bob. We are just saying that Alice is the sender and Bob is the receiver. So what Alice does is, Alice is going to send polarized photons over a fiber optic cable to to Bob. And what Bob does, Bob is going to use beam splitters. Like every photon is polarized, so there is a polarization of every polarization associated with every photon. So Bob will be using a beam splitter to read that polarization level. Like what exactly is the quantum state of that particular photon. So it is going to find out that. And if any eavesdropper is there in between, and that eavesdropper is going, it's trying to read that particular photon. What happens in this case is, if they try to read a photon, a slight alteration in the quantum state of the photon occurs. The state is going to, there is going to be an effect in polarization levels. So this is going to introduce errors in the quantum key on which Bob and Alice have agreed upon. So if there is a change there, if it is altered, Bob and Alice are alerted that there is someone listening onto your communication. So your key has been compromised. So what they do, they can just discard that particular key, and Alice will be sending a new key to communicate again. So there is a complexity in the terms of quantum mechanics in this particular area. Like the particles that make up the universe, they are uncertain and can simultaneously exist in more than one place or more than one state of being. So if you're using photons, you're using polarized photons to like generate the message and to send it uh, perform the transmission. So these photons are generated randomly in one of the two quantum states, and you cannot measure a quantum property without changing or disturbing it. Like alterations are already going to be there, so you cannot measure the properties. You can clone some quantum properties of a particle, but not the whole particle. So the particles of the universe, if we are using that, so there are various challenges that we'll be encountering in that. So here I have provided a link towards the complete description of quantum cryptography. So if you're interested, you can go through that link, and the complete description is there, like how the polarization of photons is done, how these polarized photons are sent over fiber optic cables, and how beam splitters are used to read the polarization level of each photon, and how an eavesdropper's attack is recorded, and how the users are alerted. So you can go through that if you wish. Then at last, I would like to say that as the need for unbreakable encryption looms in networks around the world, quantum cryptography is a solution that will safeguard and future-proof sensitive information. Like in some previous years, it was said that there is nothing as such as unbreakable encryption. Like everything is breakable. Every encryption algorithm has some loopholes. But quantum cryptography is having such a potential that this can become the unbreakable encryption algorithm, which is ever possible. Like for every other algorithm, it's breakable. Some can be broken in 2 days, some can be broken in 2000 years, but those are breakable. Like we can find out some time limit in which those can be broken. But for quantum cryptography, there is no such notion of like breaking down this encryption. So this is what I had planned for today's lecture. So if you want me to repeat anything, so, and if there are no further queries, we can have a short introduction session with the participants. If anybody would like to raise a hand, kindly post in the chat box.